Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're diving into a figure who really needs no introduction, but whose story never gets old, Alexander the Great.
Right.
You sent in a really fascinating excerpt from his Wikipedia page, so let's see what amazing insights we can pull out of it. I mean, we're talking undefeated battles, cities founded across continents, and a death shrouded in enough mystery to keep those history buffs debating for centuries.
Yeah, what I think often gets lost in all the stories about his conquests is that Alexander wasn't just born into power. It's like he was practically raised for it.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're getting at. So let's rewind all the way back to the beginning, his early life in Pella. Even his birth date, thought to be July 20, 356 BC, has this air of destiny about it.
Oh, how so?
Well, it just so happens to be the same day his father, King Philip II, received news of some pretty big military victories. Oh, and on top of that, the Temple of Artemis burned down that same day.
Wow. Talk about an entrance. Imagine the whispers surrounding a birth like that. Was it a sign of greatness to come? Or maybe a harbinger of chaos?
Right, it really sets the stage for a dramatic life. And then there's his education, or should I say, who his father brought in to be his personal tutor, none other than Aristotle.
Oh, wow. You're talking the Aristotle, father of logic, right?
The one and only.
I mean, talk about an influential teacher. I can't even imagine the kind of education Alexander must have received.
Well, and picture this. Their classroom wasn't some stuffy old room. They held their lessons in the Temple of the Nymphs.
Wow. So not your average classroom then. I mean, a temple dedicated to divine beings. It's almost like they knew he was destined for great things.
Right. And here's a detail that I always found fascinating. Aristotle gifted Alexander an annotated copy of Homer's Iliad, which he carried with him everywhere. This wasn't just a boy learning to read. This was a future conqueror absorbing tales of heroes and glory.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, growing up surrounded by all that, the philosophy, the literature, and having a military strategist as a father, that combination must have profoundly shaped how Alexander saw the world.
Absolutely. And speaking of his father and how he shaped things, Alexander's world changed dramatically with his father's assassination in 336 BC.
Oh, right. Philip II, wasn't he at his daughter's wedding when it happened?
He was. Talk about a family affair gone wrong.
Wow. What did they ever figure out what happened? Who did it?
Well, the exact details are still murky, with some historians even suggesting Alexander's mother, Olympias, might have been involved.
Wow, really? It's incredible how often historical accounts differ, especially when it comes to events that happen within a royal court.
Right. But one thing's for sure, Alexander acted swiftly to consolidate his power, which, as we know, became a hallmark of his reign.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to those legendary military campaigns. I mean, the guy was undefeated in battle.
It's true. That's a record that's practically unheard of, right?
Wow.
I mean, to this day, military minds still study his tactics. And, while his undefeated record is impressive, what's even more fascinating is how he took those victories and used them to reshape the world. It wasn't just about conquering, it was about what he did after. Let's take the Battle of Gaugamela, for instance, his face-off against Darius III of Persia.
Oh, yeah, in 331 BC, that's one for the history books for sure.
Exactly. It's such a great example of his strategic thinking.
Mhm.
I mean, think about it. He was facing a much larger Persian army, but he somehow anticipated their every move. Even used one of their tactics, a feigned retreat against them, lured their chariots out, which created this gap in their lines, and then boom, Alexander's elite cavalry, the companions, just smashed right through, securing the win.
And essentially handing him control of the Persian Empire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like I said, for Alexander, it wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about using these victories as stepping stones to achieving his ultimate ambitions, which, as we'll see, went far beyond just conquering new territory.
It's like he understood that real power wasn't just about, well, winning on the battlefield, but about using those victories to shape the world in a lasting way.
Exactly. And that leads perfectly into Alexander's city building, which, and I think this is really important, wasn't just about, constructing buildings. It was something way grander. We're talking over 20 cities founded, each one strategically placed, intended to be a sort of beacon of what would become the Hellenistic period.
Okay, hold on. The Hellenistic period. I think our listeners could use a little refresher here. What exactly does that mean?
Right, so picture this. You know how we always see those Greek influences in Roman art and architecture?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, that's the lasting legacy of the Hellenistic period. And it was set in motion by Alexander's conquests. But it went far beyond just military victories. It was this fascinating fusion of Greek and Eastern ideas, languages, even just their everyday ways of life.
Oh, wow. I see. So these cities were designed to be like these cultural hubs spreading that influence.
Exactly. Let's take Alexandria Eshet, for example. The furthest, that's what they called it, which just shows you the reach of his ambition. Or there's Bucephalus,
Named after his horse.
the one and only. And that always struck me as significant. Like, it suggests that there was this personal element to all of it, too. This desire to leave a mark that went beyond just, I was here and I conquered.
Wow, that's incredible when you think about the legacy these cities created, even if some of their names have changed over time.
Right. And of course, no city exemplifies this more than Alexandria, Egypt. I mean, talk about a global center for trade, scholarship, culture, not to mention home to the legendary Library of Alexandria.
Oh, absolutely. One of the largest, most extensive libraries in the ancient world. Imagine the knowledge that was housed within those walls.
Right. It really speaks to that vision Alexander had, a world where knowledge and culture could flow just as freely as his armies once did.
It makes his death in Babylon at 32 all the more tragic. And speaking of which, this excerpt mentions his last plans, which, I have to say, ambitious doesn't even cover it. Military campaigns to conquer the Western Mediterranean, huge building projects, even plans to kind of like intermix populations through mass marriages and relocations. It's like the guy was just getting started.
Yeah, there really is a sense of grandeur to it, this vision of a truly unified world, stretching from Greece all the way to the Indian Ocean. In fact, some historians believe these plans show just how much Alexander wanted to create a cosmopolitan world, a true melting pot of cultures and ideas.
That's amazing. I mean, to have that kind of forward thinking, especially for that time period.
It really is remarkable. Although it is important to note that, not all scholars agree on whether these last plans were actually, his. Some argue that they might have been embellished or even just completely made up by, his successors trying to, make their own claims to power seem more legitimate.
Ah, the ever-present shadow of history. It really makes you wonder, were these grand plans truly his vision or just a convenient tool for those who came after him?
It's a question that continues to spark debate among historians to this day. Unfortunately, like so much else about Alexander's life, it's something we may never know for sure.
It's fascinating, though, isn't it? The way history gives us these little clues, these glimpses into the past, but never the complete picture.
Absolutely. It's up to us to kind of grapple with those ambiguities, to reconcile the brilliance of his achievements with the ruthlessness he often displayed. I mean, he was a figure full of contradictions, wasn't he?
Absolutely, and maybe that's what makes him so endlessly fascinating. He wasn't just this one-dimensional conqueror. He was a visionary, a dreamer, and, well, maybe a bit of a flawed genius who nonetheless left this undeniable mark on the world.
Well said. His legacy continues to inspire, intrigue, and challenge us even after all these centuries.
It truly does. Now, this excerpt also mentions the mystery surrounding Alexander's death. And oh boy, are there theories. Poison, illness, maybe even the consequences of his legendary, shall we say, excesses. What are your thoughts? Do you think it was natural causes? Or was there something more, well, let's just say suspicious going on?
Well, if you're looking for easy answers, I'm afraid the sources don't offer any. Some accounts describe this sudden, violent fever, while others suggest a more gradual decline, perhaps malaria or typhoid. Both were pretty common in the region at the time.
Oh, right, of course. And then there's always that suspicion of poison, especially given all the political maneuvering that went on back then. It's like something straight out of Shakespeare.
Exactly. The possibility of foul play just adds another layer to the intrigue surrounding his death, doesn't it? Was it a rival general, jealous of his power and success, or maybe a disgruntled courtier seeking revenge?
So many possibilities, but still no real answers, enough to make your head spin.
It really is. And again, maybe that's part of what keeps his story alive. Alexander was a man who lived life on this epic scale, and even his death has become a source of endless fascination and debate.
I mean, it's almost like the mystery just makes the legend that much bigger, But even with all the unanswered questions, there's just no denying the impact he had. I mean, even this little Wikipedia excerpt gives you a sense of it, right?
It really is remarkable. His conquests weren't just about military dominance, but they really were catalysts for this incredible cultural exchange, this kind of intellectual innovation. We just don't see that very often in history, at least not on that scale.
And you touched on this earlier, but this whole concept of the Hellenistic period, this fusion of Greek and Eastern traditions, it's mind-blowing. He took the best of both worlds and said, let's make something new.
Absolutely. You've got this empire stretching from Greece all the way to India. So you're talking about a huge diversity of cultures and people. And his conquests, while they were definitely disruptive, no doubt about that, they also created all these new opportunities for interaction and exchange, things that just wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
So are we saying Alexander's campaigns basically shaped Western civilization as we know it today? Is that going too far?
Not at all. I mean, think about it. Greek language, their philosophy, art, architecture, it spread throughout the Eastern Mediterranean and beyond. It directly influenced the development of Roman culture, which, well, here we are today. It's all connected.
It's incredible when you really think about it, the ripple effect of his actions. I mean, I guess in a way he wasn't just a conqueror, but like a cultural ambassador, although one who maybe arrived with a bit of a, shall we say, forceful presence.
Right. But we can't forget about those 20 cities he established. They weren't just military bases. They were centers of knowledge, trade, cultural exchange. Each city was a kind of testament to this idea he had of a more interconnected world.
It's like he was planting seeds for a new world order, one where cultures could mix freely. And, speaking of those cities, I don't think we can overstate the legacy of Alexandria, Egypt. It's still a thriving city today.
Exactly. Alexandria, with the library and the lighthouse, it really embodies that Hellenistic ideal. It drew scholars, poets, artists, everybody from all over the known world was drawn to it. And that created a kind of energy, a kind of cultural and intellectual ferment that lasted for centuries.
It's such a shame that so much of that knowledge has been lost over time. Imagine the treasures they must have had in that library.
It's a reminder that even the greatest legacies can be fragile.
That's for sure. Wow, well, this deep dive has been quite the journey. We've covered a lot: Alexander's conquests, his ambitions, his flaws, and of course his lasting impact.
It's been fascinating. It really is a testament to just how captivating Alexander the Great remains to this day. He continues to fascinate and challenge how we see history.
Well put. And for our listener, we hope this has made you want to explore even more about Alexander the Great. I mean, there's no shortage of books, documentaries, even other podcasts out there.
And who knows? Maybe one day archaeologists will finally uncover his tomb, and who knows what secrets it might hold. Until then, we just have to keep exploring, debating, and being amazed by his story.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.